What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating your confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm an ADHD kid with a dream to see more women living lives that we're excited about. I want to see us breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and start living life more on our own terms, where we're in line with our values, we're pursuing our purpose, and we're making our dreams turn into realities. If that sounds good to you, you're going to love this episode because today we are talking all about baby steps. So, last week we talked about how to make your dreams come true. And now I want to talk about kind of that balance between zooming out and having like a bird's eye view of the overall plan and then zooming in and taking those like baby tiny steps, right? Sometimes there's an analogy that's used like a bird's eye view and then tiny mouse steps to kind of paint the picture of like what we're referring to here. Um, because we want when you're thinking about how to make a dream come true and how to accomplish like a big goal, you want to have a general idea of where you're going, right? So we want to have a plan, a concept, concepts of a plan. Um, we want to have a general like direction and guide so that you have a standard to know like what's on track and what's off track. Also to have like milestones along the way and to have an idea of like the steps needed to get somewhere. So, for example, if you have a goal of writing a book, then you want to have a general idea of like the path to writing a book while you're taking like those small baby steps writing the book. Because if we don't have the big picture of what is the book about? Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Are we aiming for, 800 pages or 8,000 pages, right? And if we don't have a general idea, then it's hard to know what steps to take because you don't know which direction to start walking in. You don't know when to turn right or when to turn left because you don't have the big picture of where you're going. So I use that example to kind of support why I'm saying that we need a big picture view because I also think there's times when it's like, well, you can take a couple steps and like see what happens, right? You can dip a toe in, you can experiment. But when we've decided on a goal, then I think more often than not, it's beneficial to have like an overarching plan and an idea of where we're going, and then kind of coming back down and understanding that we're not going to accomplish this all in one big leap and that we are more likely to have consistent progress when we break things down to where we can be taking small, consistent action towards it. So I believe like these two are most of the time like the best combination for really accomplishing these big dreams that we're working to make come true, right? So the analogy being zoom out or bird's eye view and then zoom in and mouse steps or taking those little baby steps. And so I want to start with like establishing that framework of like why I think that that's important and then this is an effective like combination because it's valuable to have an overview to know where you're going, but we can't do everything all in like one fell swoop, right? And I think that disconnect is where so many of us get frustrated and it can make it really easy to like want to give up or feel like we're stuck and not really sure where to go next because there's a lot of air between a tiny mouse step and a bird's eye view. Okay. So how do we bridge that gap and kind of make the connections between the two so that those baby steps, those tiny mouse steps are actually adding up to what you're seeing in that big picture bird's eye view. One of the things that I found super powerful is having milestones. So if you know where you want to go and you know where you are, those are like two critical pieces. Knowing where you want to go. Because even if you, because I know I talk a lot about like discovering and pivoting and like realizing we actually want to go somewhere else while we're on a journey. That's totally fine. And I fully support that. And before we start taking action, we want a direction to aim in, right? So even if that goal is going to change in the future, we're working with what you know now. And we're doing the best that we can with what we have now. So it's the current goal. And if that changes in the future, totally fine. And if you pivot, totally fine. But what is the current goal? What are we aiming at right now? And so we're using that as point B of where you want to go. Even if it might change, that's what we're working towards right now. And so knowing where you want to go and knowing where you are allows you to kind of connect the dots and see what things do I need to get from here to there. So if you're going from New York to California, right, you know where you are and you know where you want to be, and then you can figure out how am I going to get there? Am I going to fly? Am I going to take a car? Am I going to roller skate? You know, and you have the data now because you know where you are, you know where you want to go, and so you might consider it's best for your personality type. If you're anything like me, like let's just fly, okay? And then we can look and see, okay, well, maybe there aren't any direct flights, so maybe we need a layover in Chicago, and boom, boom, boom. So then that's a milestone, right? Like that's a landmarker along the way. And if you have to lay over in Chicago and then maybe you have to lay over in Nevada, then okay, so we have like two milestones from New York to Chicago to Nevada to California. And so for me, like that's so helpful because I love to know what to expect for every step along the way. I would love like the path to be just completely laid out and to know every single step I'm going to be taking and to know exactly what to expect at every point along the way. I'm a little autistic. And to have just like everything super clearly laid out and I can just like follow the specific plan. Like I don't, I'm not great at cooking. I don't have like a vibe for it, but I can follow a recipe. I'm very much a rule follower. Like, tell me what to do, and I can follow the steps. And if you're anything like me, like that's kind of what we want in a plan, right? But I have learned along my life that there's actually so much potential for things to change. And maybe once you're in Chicago, right, like somebody shows you a different flight option, and maybe it's actually like way better to lay over in New Mexico instead of Nevada, or like, sometimes you get to a point and you realize like, oh, let's tweak this a little bit, or there's a better way to do this. And so it actually can be more beneficial like further along the path when you don't really know what things are going to look like because it's pretty far away. Just let that be vague. Okay. We might not know, you might not know what you're going to eat for lunch when you have a layover in the airport in Nevada. And that's okay. You can figure that out when you get a little closer. Or maybe, like you have a rental car reservation in California, but you don't know exactly what vehicle you're going to get. You don't have the license plate number yet. That's okay. You don't need that yet. And so for me, who, I'm a recovering perfectionist, I'm a recovering control freak, that has actually been a game changer for me to like let go a little bit and be like these steps further down the road, as long as I have a general idea of where I'm going and kind of what I'm probably gonna need, I don't have to figure out all the details before I take this first step way over here. I can focus on that and I can focus on what's right in front of me and taking those steps. And then the things that are further along the journey, I'll have time and then I'll have more experience under my belt and I'll have more of a feel for like what this journey is looking like and what I want it to look like and who I want to be along this journey. And I'm gathering all this information that's actually going to inform me and help me make a better decision as I get further along the journey to those additional milestones or decision points or whatever we want to call them, right? And trusting that it's actually better for me to allow some freedom and flexibility down the road because I will be more equipped to make better decisions as I get closer to that point. I can plan everything out now and, figure, and decide what license plate number I want for my rental car in California before I've even gotten on the plane in New York. But does that really help me? In my experience, no, because I'm gonna freak out because the license plate's not on any of the cars. And I'm gonna be like, the whole plan is derailed. I'm gonna be freaking out over something that, when you zoom out, bird's eye view, doesn't actually matter. So it actually behooves me to allow that flexibility and be like, I'm going to figure that out when I get a little closer because I'll have more experience traveling and I'll have a better understanding for like what's important and what's not important on this journey. Like the color of the car, as I get closer, I might realize doesn't matter. So I don't need to spend a lot of time and energy at the very beginning at the New York airport trying to figure out what color my rental car should be. However, when I'm at the New York airport and I'm looking to catch my flight to get me to California, having a little bit more detail and a little bit more information in my plan is helpful and it is useful, right? Like now I need to know my gate number. Now I need to know what seat on the airplane I'm going to be. So I'm going to the right seat. When I'm at the airport, if I'm hungry and want breakfast, then it's going to be valuable for me to take a look and be like, what am I going to have for breakfast this morning? Because those are relevant, right? Like those decisions that are in that first step that's right in front of me of like where I'm at right now, those are relevant and those are important. And so it's beneficial to get into more minutia and more specific information for the step that I'm on. But I don't need to figure out what I'm going to eat at the airport in California. I can figure that out later. And I'm not saying like you need to wait till the last minute for everything, right? But it's like relevancy is powerful. And like for me, like wanting to be a perfectionist and wanting to kind of control everything and just being ADHD, like hierarchies of importance aren't oh it doesn't always like come naturally to me. So this has been really helpful for me to be able to kind of separate these ideas and compartmentalize them, knowing that things that are further down the road can be more vague. That's okay, and I will continue preparing as I get closer. And along this journey, I'm gathering so much insight and knowledge and data and information about myself, and even a clearer vision of what I want that next step to look like as I'm completing this first step and you're getting further along the journey. So, milestones are powerful, I think, for me to kind of know to break down that big goal and to have a concept to wrap your mind around this is possible. This is doable. If I'm writing a book, like, okay, that's a huge goal and it feels overwhelming and I've never written a book before, so how even am I going to do that? And it's like, okay, well, let me break down some milestones, right? We're going to separate writing the book from publishing the book. Okay, so I don't have to worry about how I'm going to publish the book yet. I can focus on having a book to publish. Or, if you want to be separated it more, right? I'm not even writing the book yet. I'm just writing a proposal. And so having those milestones and breaking it down, you have something a little more tangible to focus on and to get into and to accomplish. Okay, I don't know hardly anything about writing a book, so like don't take these milestones to heart. They're just for an example. But like if I'm not worrying about getting it published right and I'm not even worried about writing the book yet, I'm worried about maybe doing a proposal to get, I think the way it works is like a publishing company fronts you money, unless you're going to self-publish, and that's a whole different thing. But it's like, so if I'm not writing the book yet, then I just research what does it look like to write a proposal? What do I need for that? And so that's like the milestone that kind of becomes its own goal. And then I can break that down even further. So part of why I love milestones is because it gives you something that you can break it down enough. Like writing a book, super overwhelming. Starting a business, super overwhelming. But if I break it down into milestones of writing a book proposal or figuring out what kind of business I want to start, then it's something I can kind of wrap my mind around and have more useful thoughts for the specificity allows me to ask better questions and to do more targeted research because the goal isn't as huge. Now I have a milestone and I can use that as a goal. So instead of researching how to write a book, what is life, I can research how to, I already forgot what I was saying, a book deal or something, like how to write a proposal. And then that's going to give me more like bite-sized pieces to actually take action on. So with the milestones, the one you're focusing on, so for example, like the book proposal, that's going to be what I'm going to be focusing on and getting into the details about because that's where I'm actually going to be taking the action. The milestones further down the road can be a little bit more vague, and I can figure them out and get more detail on those as I get closer, right? So instead of breaking down the milestone of finding a publisher, I'm just going to leave that on the shelf for right now and I will do more research and I will get more information and I will prepare more for that step when I'm closer to that step and I'm starting to get ready for that step. But right now, when I'm working on writing my book proposal, I'm not going to let all that concern of the third milestone clutter my brain. I'm going to be able to focus on what I'm working on right now. And then we'll address that milestone when it becomes the time. So milestones, important, and it's okay for the further ones to be vague. And then when you're in that whatever current milestone you're on right now, wherever leg of the journey you're on, you can focus on that and break that down into smaller steps. So if we're looking at the New York to California, right? And your milestone one is like get on that first flight from New York to Chicago. So then when you're, so then you can break that down, right? Like, okay, how am I going to get to the airport? Am I going to have a friend drop me off? Am I going to take public transportation? Am I going to pay for an Uber? La la la. With what time am I going to get there? Well, so then you can backtrack, like reverse engineer, right? Like, when does my flight leave? Okay, I want to get there 2 hours early, whatever. How long does it take to get to the airport? Okay, so when do I need to leave my house? Okay, so when do I need to be packed by? Okay, so when do I need to do laundry? Okay, so, and then you can work backwards like that. So you have your goal, but you have a manageable goal of like the flight to Chicago. Maybe it's the first, which this isn't a great explanation because packing involves more than just the first leg of your flight, but you get what I mean. Or the publishing deal, right? Like, okay, we need to figure out what are the components of of writing a book proposal. Um, what tone, what resources am I going to need for this? How much of an idea of the book am I going to need? Do I need like a really solid outline or do I just need an idea? How am I going to approach this? Right? Does the proposal need to be more like conversational where I'm telling a story about the story I want to write? Or does it need to be more like structured where I'm doing like an outline and I'm explaining what each chapter is going to cover. So those kinds of things so that you can start making progress towards that one milestone and then move forward as you get further. So when you're starting out, you have the huge goal, you break it down in the milestone, and then you focus on that first milestone. What are you doing first? What are the first steps that need to happen? And part of why I think having milestones is so powerful is because you can kind of compartmentalize it and put it on the shelf. Like, okay, I need to do this, and that is a step along this journey, and I'll get to it. And right now, I'm focusing on this step. And so you're able to kind of like take all the like brain noise for those further on steps and be like, yes, I'm setting you down and freeing up more space in your brain to focus on what's in front of you right now and what you're doing in these first steps. And then breaking down that milestone further, right? And like, okay, so what are the things that I need to do first? What are the steps in this milestone? If I'm treating that as a goal now, how do I break that down? And then you can have, kind of smaller landmarks within the milestone, maybe of learning how to do a book proposal and then actually writing the proposal and then having somebody else proofread it or, whatever steps those are going to be to get you to that first milestone, breaking it down. And then the actual baby step of the actual action that you're taking, right? So, if we're looking at the milestone of that first leg of the flight from New York to Chicago, then maybe your steps can be figure out how you're getting to the airport, pack for the trip, um, I don't know, pay for the flight, right? Like, so then you have more concrete, smaller, achievable things. But then even within those, you can break that down even further also. And part of why I think this is so important is because I know for me and a lot of ADHDers, we still feel overwhelmed by just one step. And it might seem easy and super doable for a neurotypical person, but breaking it down to it so easy can be really powerful for us. Okay, so if we're thinking about the flight, researching the flight options, could just be the first step, and then figuring out how you're going to pay for it. If you're going to put it on a credit card, which card, which one has the cash back that you want, right? Or like whatever that is. If you need to transfer money to a debit card, to a checking account, so you can use a debit card, not a credit card. Those little like mini decisions within there allow you to take that action step of booking the flight. But you can see if you need to break it down further, you can. Choose where you're going to book the flight from. Choose what time flight you're gonna look for. How you're going to pay for the flight, and then a ride to the airport. Right? Are you going look at public transportation and see how that is if you want to do that, or you can get an estimate on an Uber and see how much that's going to be. You can call around your friends and your family and see if anyone's available to drive you and drop you off. Those are all steps within getting a ride to the airport. And so this ties back to why I think milestones are so important because when you're looking at that tiny step compared to that whole big plan of the flight, or when you're looking at brainstorming book proposal letter headers, like, you know, compared to writing an entire book, it's crazy. But when we chunk it down, it helps us get to that level of detail to where the step is small enough where we can actually take action without being overwhelmed by the step. And so you go from the big goal and you break it down and you break it down and you break it down, and as you're breaking down the milestones that are closer to you, the milestones further down the road, those can stay big milestones. You don't have to break everything down all at once. And I think that's what's so powerful is like you can just let that be its own milestone and put that up on the shelf, put that on the back burner, and focus on now I'm breaking down to smaller and smaller pieces what I have in front of me right now. And then it allows you to get into the level of detail to where you're able to, okay, I'm ready, I can take this step where it's small enough to where it's not too scary, where you're frozen in fear. It's small enough to where it's manageable and you can actually take that action. And then you'll do the same thing, right? Like once you get to the second milestone, you're going to break that down and you're going to do the same thing. But allowing those further milestones to be kind of big and vague, that's okay. And it allows you to have that focus on like the minutia almost for the current milestone. Okay. And part of why I'm so passionate about this is because being overwhelmed keeps so many of us ADHDers stuck, not doing anything. And it took me so long to like dig into it and because again, I was avoiding that too because it was overwhelming. Why am I not doing the things I want to do? That's a huge question, very overwhelming. And it took me a long time to dig into it and try and start figuring out like, I'm overwhelmed by simple tasks that neurotypicals have no problem doing. And then it's like, oh, I'm also overwhelmed because I'm dealing with all these feelings of shame because I feel like I should be able to do this and I should have already done this weeks ago because it's not even that hard. And yet I'm like paralyzed and like, what is going on? Right. And so even, it has been so powerful for me to understand that overwhelm has been such a way that I get stuck so often. And like that's why I'm really getting into like so much minutia here because for me it was so important. And so I want to make sure I'm like communicating this in a clear way with the acknowledgement that like just overwhelm can keep us so stuck sometimes. And especially for me, like one of the ways I've gotten past that is breaking things down small enough into tiny steps. That's why I call them baby steps to where it's actually doable even with your ADHD, even with your autism, even with feeling stressed out and wherever you're at, right? Like if we can break it down small enough to take action, that's the goal because it all boils down to, or it all clinches upon, right? Like it all depends on the action that we take. You can plan your ass off. You can plan anything. You can plan for your whole life. And if you never actually do anything, nothing changes. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to make any of your dreams come true. It all hinges on action. So, whatever I can do to get myself to a place where I'm able to take action, that's what I need to do because action is where the magic happens. So if you have a milestone and you're able to knock out that milestone, boom, love that. You don't need any of this breaking it down into baby steps. Like go make your dreams come true. Like go make that shit reality. I love that. If you're more like me, where you keep getting stuck on overwhelm and you feel trapped and you're stuck and you're overwhelmed and you're kind of spinning your wheels, great. You're not alone. Let's break it down. And you're still stuck. It's still too big. It's still overwhelming. It's still too scary. Okay, let's break it down again. Now, do we think we can build up the courage to take that step? Almost? No? Still a little scary? No problem. Let's break it down again. Maybe we're not even deciding on which flight to book. Maybe we're just spending 5 minutes looking at flights. That's okay. Do that. And I know one of the things that trapped me is I kept feeling like it wasn't enough, so it wasn't worth doing. And I know I'm like throwing too many examples around, but I'm gonna switch over, switch gears here. I kept wanting to read more. I was like, I like reading. I like being an educated person. Like I want to, there's so many people keep recommending books to me. And my to read list is miles long and I'm not making any progress on it. And I had the thought of like, Mary Beth, you know how to break things down. And like 5 minutes is doable. What if I read for 5 minutes a day? And I immediately was like, that's not enough. It's too simple. It's not enough. Like 5 minutes, no, you might as well not do it. And then I was like, wait, you might as well do it, bro. Because if I'm reading for 5 minutes, that's way more than the 0 minutes I've been reading because 5 minutes isn't good enough progress. 5 minutes isn't dramatic enough change for me. No, 5 minutes is fine because I'm going to actually do 5 minutes. And if 5 minutes is still too much, then do 3 minutes. Break it down small enough to where you can do it and you're taking action. Because that is what makes your dreams reality is the action. That is what is in between those 2 points. So whatever we can do, like everything else is just strategy for how to get to taking action. And that's different for different people, right? And so that's why I'm sharing my perspective, where I come from, and having to break things down to ridiculously small 5 minutes a day so I can make my dreams reality. And now, guess what? In 5 minutes a day, I've already read more than I've read in the past like 6 months because it's doable. And so I'm doing it. I made it easy enough to where I can actually take the action. And now I'm taking action instead of just spinning my wheels with this huge goal in front of me that's too big for me to do in one leap. And so I'm just not doing it. I'm sitting there spinning my wheels. Okay. So that's why I'm harping so much on this and I'm so passionate about it because, yes, have the big goal, have the big dream, absolutely. And then chunk it down. And then once it's chunked, once you have a milestone, break it down even further so you have baby steps that you can actually execute on. And once we get to that point where you've decided your first baby step, go ahead and take it. Do whatever that action is. If it's Googling how to write a book proposal, or if it is, Googling flights, or if it's reading for 5 minutes a day to try to get through your huge to read list, whatever that first step is, take that step. And if you find yourself not being able to take that step, then break it down even further and ask, what is the smallest thing I can do to make progress towards this goal today, right now? What can I do? And then do it. And then whatever comes up, like why you're not doing it, Maybe you need to break it down. Maybe it's still overwhelming. But what is the smallest progress you can make towards that thing that you want to do? And do it. Because action's where it's at. Action's literally where the magic happens. So whatever we can do to get ourselves to a place where we're able to take action, that is hugely important. All right. I'm so proud of you. I think you're doing so great. If you want like more conversation about how to do these things or like maybe kind of geared specifically toward your situation or whatever, I always love hearing from you. Hit me up on social media at the Fierce Framework. I'll include a link to join my email newsletter, and so you'll get those Saturday morning. If you prefer email, you can just respond there. Um, if you're interested in, I'm trying to think of when this is going to air. Yes, I should have some slots opening up by the time this episode airs. So if you're interested in talking more about maybe coaching together and working together, I would also love to hear from you. I should have availability coming up, so that's really exciting. Um, yeah, you're doing so great. I will see you so soon. And until then, keep becoming fierce.